Hello, everybody. I'm veteran South Florida journalist Laurel Sauer. Welcome to Issues Reports. From its beautiful beaches to its thriving nightlife, Miami is seen as a vibrant, world-class city. But that glitz and glamour is lost on one population, the homeless. An estimated 4,000 people live on the streets of Miami-Dade County. For many of them, a key cause is a treatable mental illness. But recent cuts to the county's federal homeless funding means less help for the people who need it the most. While the problem is definitely not unique to our region, one South Florida organization is working on a rather unique solution. What are they doing, and is it making a difference? Here's Issues Reports, Homeless in Paradise.
In the streets is very dangerous, and it's very humiliating. And then, you see people go home every day and you wish you was one of those people. And it's very humiliating while people watching you and looking at you like you some exhibit, like you in a zoo. And sometimes you feel like you're not human, you feel like an animal. I was cool about it, and I was like, one day I just have to be patient. And we will be out of this, and we will be just like everybody else. And that's all we want, is to be like everybody else.
Tony and his partner Regina came off the streets and into shelter a couple of months ago.
We spent a lot of time at the Bayfront Park. We sit on the bench, because there's not really many places a homeless person can go. And we sit there most of the day. And the outreach comes out at the different spots, talk to homeless people and try to help them see what they need or whatever. That's how we got in contact with the Lazarus team when they came out.
Much like the biblical Lazarus, the Lazarus Project helps bring one of Miami's most overlooked populations back to life. We're talking about that portion of the homeless population diagnosed with serious mental illness, or SMI. The National Institute of Mental Health defines it as an adult 18 or over who has or has had in the past year a diagnosable mental illness, behavioral or emotional disorder that has impaired their ability to function or limits their major life activities. According to a recent Conference of Mayors report, nearly a third of the chronically homeless suffer from severe mental illness. It also cites mental illness as the third most common cause of homelessness, topped only by the lack of affordable housing and poverty.
It was mentally devastating. It was horrible. It was humiliating, degrading. You feel like trash. You feel that nobody cares about you, especially when you don't have any family support system, which I didn't have, and you feel that you're alone. I felt that I was alone a lot. I felt like killing myself so many times.
It's a pattern of helplessness the Lazarus team has seen over and over when the mentally ill are left to fend for themselves on the streets.
I wonder why they would go into crisis, come back, go in, and every week, every month they will go get arrested. The police would take them to crisis or take them to jail, and they would be back on the street. I was told by a doctor that I befriended at the crisis unit that it takes anywhere between 45 to 60 days of continuously taking the medication for it to have a therapeutic effect where you see a change in the person, you see the person be stable enough to make the right decisions.
That's Lazaro Trueba from the City of Miami's Homeless Assistance Program. He's the man who came up with the Take the Clinic to Them approach that became the Lazarus Project. The city and Camilla's House partnered on the project in 2014, with Camilla's Health providing psychiatric nurses and caseworkers, while the city's homeless assistance crew helps find candidates. The goal, helping those who are mentally ill get back on their meds and off the street for good. The team goes out Monday through Friday, morning and night, looking for people in need. But as psychiatric nurse practitioner Rose Anderson can tell you, gaining a street person's trust can take some time.
A guy named Alejandro who lives downtown. He's very depressed. We've been engaging him for probably the past 10 or 11 months on a fairly regular basis. He's come into the shelter a few times to shower and change clothes, but most of the time he doesn't really come in with us, but we buy him supper when we see him downtown. We talk with him. He knows us. He's always very pleasant, but he's been really reluctant to receive any services. But we're still working with him.
The homeless, like Alejandro, cycle in and out of Judge Stephen Leifman's courtroom every day. It's a challenge, the judge says, helping the street's mentally ill.
When you're developing housing programs for people with mental illness, it cannot be traditional where you have, 300 bunk beds and it's loud and it's disruptive, because they are very uncomfortable and it hurts them to be in there. And so they rather be outside. So it's not like, they're just rejecting their housing. It's deeper and more complicated than that.
The Lazarus Project has a $700,000 budget. While some have balked at the cost, currently averaging about $18,000 per patient, supporters say that's pennies compared to the cost of incarcerations and hospitalizations that are hallmarks of the cycle of chronic homelessness. The daily price tag for housing an inmate in the county lockup is $178, with the average stay per booking at 29.5 days. That works out to $5,200 per arrest. A bed in a crisis stabilization unit runs $339 a day, with most days averaging 3 days. Costs there top $1,000 per visit. Meanwhile, the average cost of inpatient psychiatric hospitalization is $3,200 a day in Miami-Dade. Most folks are in for just over 5 days, which works out to more than $17,000 per hospitalization. So who pays? Both local and federal taxpayers. There's also a county surtax on food and beverage purchases at large restaurants. That brings in about $22 million a year, all going to fund services for the homeless and domestic violence victims. Ron Book is the man who decides where Miami-Dade County's homeless dollars are spent. As the head of the Homeless Trust, he wasn't sold on the Lazarus price tag to begin with, but he says you can't argue with its success.
I don't know how to fully analyze the cost benefit versus numbers served. I will simply say that if I've made an individual safer, and as importantly as making that chronic homeless mental health related individual with frequent episodes of irrational behavior safer, then that's a win-win. I was a skeptic when first asked to fund Lazarus. I've become a believer because I understand the issue that confronts us on our street amongst a population of homeless individuals that are in an irrational place as far as even getting off the street. Something as simple as getting under a roof with hot and cold running water, an opportunity for a shower or two a day, the opportunity to have your meals taken care of, the opportunity to sleep in air conditioning versus sleeping in the humidity of the street, the opportunity to sleep on a mattress as opposed to cardboard or concrete in general. What's the cost-benefit analysis? I'll fund Lazarus every day of the week. I've become a believer.
Virgil was on the street for nearly half his adult life, despite testing off the charts for intelligence as a kid. He turned to the streets after suffering a psychotic break during his freshman year of college.
It was a burden to live life. I was a grown man. My life was mine, you know. Don't bother my brother, my aunt, or sister, you know. I was an individual doing what I wanted to do.
Now, with his illness under control, Virgil lives in a quiet apartment of his own and credits the Lazarus Project and his family's support for his success.
It's nice sleeping on a mattress in a comfortable climate.
Virgil's brother Gerard is thankful the Lazarus team was able to get his brother off the street.
Look at this guy have extremely high IQ. If it happens to him, it could happen to anyone with extremely high IQ. So it doesn't matter how smart or how slow you may be. It could happen to anyone, anytime. It takes no prisoners.
Like Virgil, Regina is feeling more at ease, especially now that she's in an apartment and getting the psychiatric help she needs. She's even writing for a homeless advocacy page on Facebook.
Right now, I'm placed in a home, and it's mentally calming for me. I can sit down and I can write, I can think straight, I can try to figure out what I can do to help others. And I'm going to try my best to get into advocacy toward the homeless people, try to help the best way I can, because I know it's a rough experience, you know, and sometimes, you know, it can help somebody. If I can help this one person, it'd be good.
And joining me to continue this conversation today, we welcome the Honorable Stephen Leifman, Associate Administrative Judge for the 11th Judicial Circuit and Chairman of the Supreme Court of Florida's Task Force on Substance Abuse and Mental Health Issues. We thank you so much for being with us today. Thank you. And also joining us is Attorney Constance Collins, Executive Director of the Lotus House, a Miami-based homeless support organization offering shelter and services to women, youth, and children. Thank you both for being with us today. Such a major social issue and a problem, not only in Miami, but all across the country, too. Judge Leifman, I want to direct this first question to you. The HUD, Housing and Urban Development, follows this housing first model that we've talked about in the story that our viewers just watched. But services like the Lazarus Project, which we also profiled, take a different approach, bringing the clinic to the streets and addressing the issues like mental illness, which you'll be speaking to. And is one model better than the other, or should we go to a model that fuses both?
You need to develop models that work for the people that need the services. And so there's no one shoe fits all. And so Lazarus is such a unique program because it really helps go right directly to people that are not ready to go into services yet. But we certainly need a housing first model as well. Some people are ready for that point. So you need a compilation of programs that complement each other, like Lazarus and Housing First. And I think combined, we can do some remarkable things. And it's very innovative. I'm not aware of anything else in the country going on like Lazarus, where doctors and practitioners go to the street.
Yeah.
And so many of these individuals are there not because they want to be homeless, but their illness makes it really difficult for them.
Have fallen on them,
yeah,
whatever.
But plus, you know, they're overstimulated because of the illness. Sometimes certain housing programs are too stimulating for them. It makes it more difficult for them to want to come in, so they just want to be left alone. Mm-hmm. And, you know, so many of these individuals have just given up on life. And I think what Lazarus starts to do is help reestablish ties and relationships with them, and then slowly encourages them to begin to take medications so we can reduce symptomology and then get them into housing. And it's a wonderful first start.
And one other option is the Lotus House. And Constance, we're bringing you in here. When I was doing my research for this show, a shocking statistic that I found was that the majority of homeless families are led by single women. I mean, that's a horrible statistic, very alarming for this country, but Lotus House shelters women and children, and it's important that it's a non-institutional environment. Explain that to our viewers.
Sure. I mean, I think what we have to recognize is that, just as Judge Leifman said, you need to look at homelessness from an individual perspective. Yes, we have broad systems that are contributing to homelessness. But when we look for solutions, we have to look at a solution that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Women, the principal reason that women become homeless is violence. And they often have small children, ages 0 to 6 in tow. So our program really focuses on providing a nurturing, supportive environment with wraparound services that will ensure that both moms and children have an opportunity to heal.
Okay, and what are those wraparound services? We were going to talk about that. We'll just go right to it now.
Yeah, so they range from everything from infant mental health assessments and child therapy for children to individual counseling and therapy for moms, nurturing parenting classes, adult education, job training, vocational opportunities, assistance with securing employment, and of course, social services advocacy and benefits for those who are not able to work. So I think we have to recognize that while housing first sounds good, it's actually not housing first. It's shelter first, and then a
Security,
placement.
safety.
Right.
That's what most homeless are worried about too.
Right.
Yeah. Judge Leifman, you said in a quote earlier in the interview that the model of a criminal justice approach to this social problem with mental illness has failed. Why is that?
Well, because we have used a criminal justice model as opposed to either a population health model or a disease model. These are illnesses. These are not willpower. These aren't bad people. In fact, people with mental illnesses are no more dangerous than the general society. People are just afraid of them because they're not cute-looking babies, and they can be scary, but they're really not dangerous. And recovery rates for people with mental illnesses are actually much better than people with diabetes and heart disease. The key is identifying the illness, getting people treated, and the earlier we treat them, the better outcomes we get. But, you know, I don't believe that there is a problem with the person. It's usually a problem with the program. So there's not a treatment-resistant person. It's usually a treatment-resistant program. And so we have to develop programs that work for the individual. You know, one shoe fitting all doesn't work. These are mental illnesses, not a mental illness. And people have different issues regarding it. Some of it's trauma caused, which is a lot of women that end up in Constance's amazing program. A lot of these individuals end up in the criminal justice system. And so when they come into the criminal justice system, we're an adversarial system. We look at the facts, we decide if there's enough evidence to prove the case, and then punish them for their behavior. But what we've learned, particularly over the last 10, 15 years, by doing that, we've just made the matter worse. We put people in a system that they end up in their entire lifetimes recycling. And it doesn't do anything to improve public safety, it doesn't do anything to improve their recovery, and it certainly doesn't spend our tax dollars in an efficient, effective way. So what we have found is by approaching this from a disease model and finding out what caused the behavior and getting them treatment for that illness, we get much, much better results.
Constance, with the Lotus House, do enough people know about it to find it? Are you having that issue, or you were just telling the judge your bed level is full all the time? So talk to me a little bit about that.
I mean, unfortunately, we're turning away over 2,000 women and children on an annual basis. Wow. We have a new project in the planning stages. We're going through our governmental approval process now. That new project called Lotus Village will double our capacity and provide the kinds of expansive support services and programming that we really need to support these families that are struggling, both to end homelessness and to support our neighborhood in preventing homelessness with things like health care and access to child care and the range of critical contributing factors like lack of education or lack of job opportunities that have to be addressed when we want to bring an end to homelessness.
These women are going to recover and move out and take care of themselves in the world.
Absolutely.
Right? They have to be able to have those skills too.
And we as a community are so enriched by the benefit of that potential realized.
Judge Leifman, what about what seems to be working here? Is this a broken system, or we have some programs like Lotus House that are working?
You know, Miami is very unique. We have some amazing programs. Lotus House is one of them, but you know, not one person, not one program, not one institution or party created this problem, and it truly creates this wonderful collaboration between all these different stakeholders to fix it. And so the trust provides a major piece of this by funding programs that help people with housing. But we have a wonderful program in the court system now, a phenomenal diversion program. We have trained more than 4,700 police officers in Miami-Dade County how to help people with mental illnesses. And to give you an idea of its success, over a 5-year period, while we have all 36 police departments trained in Miami-Dade, the city of Miami and Miami-Dade keep statistics on every single call. Well, over that 5-year period from 2010 to 2015, they handled 49,848 mental health calls, wow. But they only made 109 arrests. And so our jail audit plummeted. It went from well over 7,000 to about 4,000 today, saving the community $12 million a year by closing a jail and helping people get back into recovery. We also have 3 post-arrest diversion programs. And so if people do get arrested and they're not at risk of any kind of violence in the community, we divert them back into services. We monitor them through the court. Our recidivism rate for our misdemeanor program dropped from about 72% to 20%. We have a felony diversion program for nonviolent offenders. They go through a year program of therapy and training. 6% recidivism rate. That program alone has saved the county between 35 and 40 years of jail bed days. And so we know that treatment works. And the key is to getting people access to treatment, getting them good treatment, and then helping them stay in treatment. People don't want to be sick.
And they don't want to be homeless. This isn't usually a preferred state of life, right, for them.
Society has beat them up pretty bad. And you know, the old mental health hospitals were abusive, and the way people treat people on the street is abusive, and so
some are working. I mean, we see some good programs out there that are being funded,
but people have given
helping.
up, and so you need programs like the ones we're talking about to help re-establish these relationships so they want to get better, and it takes a lot of work, but it's working. And so you have the jail diversion program, you have the homeless trust program, the Lazarus program, Lotus, that are all doing tremendous work to help people move forward, but we need additional resources. We're lucky that we're the only county in the United States with a dedicated tax for homelessness. I was
surprised at that on food and beverage.
And it's worked.
That's amazing.
I mean, we have really reduced homelessness in Dade County from a high of 8,000 to about 1,000 people left on the street. And the folks that are primarily left on the street today have mental health and substance abuse issues, and now we have to have new strategies to attack that problem.
Constance, I want to ask you about success programs too at Lotus House. We featured the couple in our story today about how they feel like they're trash. They've said that they feel ostracized in this society. Tell me about some success stories that you've had at Lotus House and how the recovery has helped.
So honestly, over 88% of the families that enter our program exit outside the shelter system. And these are families with serious issues that they're dealing with. Children on feeding tubes, children with cerebral palsy, moms who have PTSD, and perhaps not even a high school education. We have to look at the cost of homelessness to our community. It's so great relative to the cost of solving it. And it is going to take a partnership, not just of government and nonprofit agencies like ourselves, but with the private sector, with corporations, with individuals, with families that are enjoying success in their lives, sharing. I mean, this is really about all of us thriving. A great city is not measured by the grandeur of its buildings. It is measured by the quality of life that even the littlest or those who are most vulnerable will enjoy.
And you did say you had some good success stories coming out of Lotus House after a period of time that they stay there.
Absolutely. That's the goal, a home to call your own.
Okay. And also, Judge Leifman, we're almost out of time with 2 minutes left. Talk about the funding issue. Obviously, we were surprised to hear, we were discussing this before the show, that federal funding has been cut. That's no surprise there, too. But the actual tax that the county has, that's a help, but there needs to be more.
The federal government has changed some of their strategies. They really are moving more towards the housing first model, away from transitional housing. And so we suffered a cut of about $5 million. We've been able to make up a lot of that cut through our tax, but then that takes away from other programs we would have funded. And so that money will run through September of 2017. We have to work with the providers to change some of the work that they're doing and get them to understand that we can't just have them do transitional. We have to do some more housing first, and that we need a coalition and collaboration between those kinds of programs to really help people transition back into the community, because recovery is real, treatment works, and people can get better. And by ignoring it, it won't go away. It just makes us spend more money in tax dollars and jail and hospitalization, which people don't need if they get the services they need.
Well, with this minute 30 that we have left in the program, what point do you want to get across, Constance, to our viewers out there to help with the homeless problem?
I would say that the system is under-resourced. We cannot solve homelessness in the homeless trust and the continuum alone. It's going to take everyone contributing to that food and beverage tax. It's going to take the development of an affordable stock of housing for those with extremely low income. And it's going to take the support that homeless services need to help individuals make this transition to reclaim their lives.
And Judge Leifman, you get the last minute here.
So if people have a family member or know someone that has a mental health and they need assistance, call the police and ask for a CIT officer, Crisis Intervention Team Officer. Or if you know someone that is at risk of becoming homeless, call the Homeless Trust hotline immediately, and we will reach out. We have dollars to help people bridge their next rental payment, so we can help keep them, from
under shelter for a while,
or in their own home if we can.
Right, or in their own home.
And we have employment programs, and so people shouldn't be afraid to reach out for help. There are resources, and we want to get those resources to the people that need it.
And we're glad to see that too, that you see the problems, you see the initial homeless on the street, and you don't know how many people are working behind the scenes to help get these guys and gals under secure shelter and back into a life that they can be proud of and be happy too. So thank you so much. We hope we forwarded this conversation today and at least provided some more awareness of this ongoing problem. We are out of time at this point in our show, but I'd like to thank Judge Stephen Leifman and Constance Collins of Lotus House for joining us in this discussion today. I'm Laurel Sauer. We thank you so much for watching Issues Reports with you in mind.
Issues Reports is made possible by Paul and Swanee Damari, advancing lifelong learning and impacting change for a better South Florida.
Different spots, talk to homeless people and try to help them, see what they need or whatever. That's how we got in contact with the Lazarus team when they came out.
Much like the biblical Lazarus, the Lazarus Project helps bring one of Miami's most overlooked populations back to life. We're talking about that portion of the homeless population diagnosed with serious mental illness, or SMI. The National Institute of Mental Health defines it as an adult 18 or over who has or has had in the past year a diagnosable mental illness, behavioral or emotional disorder that has impaired their ability to function or limits their major life activities. According to a recent Conference of Mayors report, nearly a third of the chronically homeless suffer from severe mental illness. It also cites mental illness as the third most common cause of homelessness, topped only by the lack of affordable housing and poverty.
It was mentally devastating. It was horrible. It was humiliating, degrading. You feel like trash. You feel that nobody cares about you, especially when you don't have any family support system, which I didn't have, and you feel that you're alone. I felt that I was alone a lot. I felt like killing myself so many times.
It's a pattern of helplessness the Lazarus team has seen over and over when the mentally ill are left to fend for themselves on the streets.
I wonder why they would go into crisis, come back, go in, and every week, every month they will go get arrested. The police would take them to crisis or take them to jail, and they would be back on the street. I was told by a doctor that I befriended at the crisis unit that it takes anywhere between 45 to 60 days of continuously taking the medication for it to happen.
In the streets is very dangerous, and it's very humiliating. And then, you see people go home every day, and you wish you was one of those people. And it's very humiliating while people watching you and looking at you like you some exhibit, like you in a zoo. And sometimes you feel like you're not human, you feel like an animal. I was cool about it, and I was like, one day I just have to be patient and we will be out of this and we will be just like everybody else. And that's all we want, is to be like everybody else.
Tony and his partner Regina came off the streets and into shelter a couple of months ago.
We spent a lot of time at the Bayfront park. We sit on the bench, because there's not really many places a homeless person can go. And we sit there most of the day. And the outreach comes out.
A therapeutic effect where you see a change in the person. You see the person be stable enough to make the right decisions.
That's Lazaro Trueba from the City of Miami's Homeless Assistance Program. He's the man who came up with the Take the Clinic to Them approach that became the Lazarus Project. The city and Camilla's House partnered on the project in 2014, with Camilla's Health providing psychiatric nurses and caseworkers while the city's homeless assistance crew helps find candidates. The goal, helping those who are mentally ill get back on their meds and off the street for good. The team goes out Monday through Friday, morning and night, looking for people in need. But as psychiatric nurse practitioner Rose Anderson can tell you, gaining a street person's trust can take some time.
A guy named Alejandro who lives downtown. He's very depressed. We've been engaging him for...
Hello, everybody. I'm veteran South Florida journalist Laurel Sauer. Welcome to Issues Reports. From its beautiful beaches to its thriving nightlife, Miami is seen as a vibrant, world-class city. But that glitz and glamour is lost on one population, the homeless. An estimated 4,000 people live on the streets of Miami-Dade County. For many of them, a key cause is a treatable mental illness. But recent cuts to the county's federal homeless funding means less help for the people who need it the most. While the problem is definitely not unique to our region, one South Florida organization is working on a rather unique solution. What are they doing, and is it making a difference? Here's Issues Reports, Homeless in Paradise.